Hello and welcome to Elvenhome, and to this edition, which is quite a fun packed one again, with a number of various different things. You'll see the start of the work of laying the track at High Elven. You were meant to see more, but unfortunately I managed to drop my drill right on top of the set of curved points, which is absolutely crucial to the whole of the track layout. And it's only this morning, I'm recording this on Tuesday morning, that a new set of curve points has arrived, so I'm about a week behind where I expected to be. But I also take a closer look at my new gimbal. We take a look at glues in top tips, tool-time top tips, and also I show the start of the work on the signal box in turning from the drawings and the order in which I'm going to try to construct the signal box given the adaptations that I need to make. And at the very end, you will see the first part of the signal box constructed. And that takes up about 25 minutes. So I hope you enjoy the video, and I'll speak to you again at the end of the video. Okay, well this could get a bit rocky because I'm using the Osmo 3 to record this section. And just after this section, I'll then show some film of me actually using this thing. But as I'm still a bit trigger happy in dealing with the tilt and pan, I'd get the seasickness pills in if I were you. So what I'm doing here is looking at the layout. There you go. Oh, we're nearly there. Is looking at the beginning of the track laying for High Elven. Yesterday, if I go over here, you can see that the track has been laid past Sharky's End. The track setter is just left in there to keep the track straight, and the section goes over the bridge and then comes into the run of points that takes us into the various parts. What I'm going to do next is move on to put in the straight sections and make sure that I'm fitting all the buildings in. A few videos ago, and I'll put up here a caption because I've forgotten the name. I remembered the name before I started recording this, but I've forgotten it now. Somebody made a point that there would be an inspection pit in the shed. So I bought one of the Pico inspection sheds. You can see that's what it normally looks like. And I've created it to have two distinct sections. I've come into slightly better light. So that it has the bit that will be in the bottom of the shed, which goes up to a walkway, and this bit will be out the front because that's where ash will be thrown and dealt with. And I will probably build at that point a little servicing stage where it can be cold and watered. This is my first attempt, real proper attempt at weathering. I put some basic primer on, and the rest I then painted it the Humbrol roof carriage white. I think it's RC417, which is a kind of grey colour actually. If I go over to the that's the colour, that's roof carriage white, believe it or not, for the War Memorial itself. But it comes out a rather fetching grey. And then I just applied various Humbrol powders. I mixed up the black weathering powder into a wash and covered it over. I painted the walkways gunmetal, which I've got from Vallejo, and then over the top brushed some more weathering powder, and finally with some of the black enamel wash, really, because this would be very dirty and grimy. As you'll know, most of Elvenhome is beautifully clean because I can't bring myself to dirty up things, having spent hours making them. But for this, I certainly couldn't leave it that sort of cream plastic looking. And I think as there'll be ballast around it, this really needs to look in keeping. So I'm quite pleased with the outcome of that. I'm going to need to put in a groove into which that can sit, because as you can see, it's about 5mm depth. So I have acquired a new tool for the Dremel, which is the routing attachment. I don't know whether in this video I will get on to actually doing that. Probably I will, but I will record that in due course. So what I want to do at the moment is just get the track on. I won't be fitting the points just yet. I want to get the track on and powered, and that will include making sure that the space for the engine shed and the train shed works, because the original plan of course didn't have the whole of the engine shed in it, so that's slightly wider than it was, but also this inspection pit is slightly longer than the piece of track I had originally going just into the engine shed, so I need just to adjust things a bit from my plan. So I'll come back once I've got all that track laid and power into it, just to show you where we've got to with that. You've probably just seen on an earlier clip my new gimbal. Let's go this way, remember to go the opposite way. My new gimbal, which is the Osmo 3. The previous version was great as a gimbal, but it had one big drawback, which was if I turn this round and come up to the camera a bit, you couldn't put a microphone into it. The way that the old gimbal held it, it grasped the phone essentially like that. So the port for attaching anything was completely covered. And if you tried to put anything in, it completely unbalanced it. Whereas, as you can see with this one, I'm using a wired lavalier mic. The sound you're hearing is coming from the phone, not from this. So that I don't know, because I can't put a microphone into this video camera. When I bought this video camera, right at the beginning of doing Elvenhome, I think after the first episode with my DSLR, which was just awful, I bought the video camera that you're seeing me through. But I didn't know enough to know that you should be able to put an external mic to it. So that's why I now went over to the phone. And the gimbal has, as you may have seen, allows me to get much closer to things than I can do by having it mounted on the tripod. And if I show you now, this is the normal tripod that I use. I'm really pleased with the gimbal. It works pretty well in all sorts of things, generally speaking. There are reviews of how to use this gimbal. This cost me, now let me think, I think it cost me £119, but that was to get, in addition to the gimbal, to get a tripod stand, a proper case, and something else. And I can't remember what something else is, but it is of no great consequence. Now, I can't remember what my previous gimbal was. When I put this up, I'll put the price of the Osmo 2, which was what I was using. It folds down very small indeed. In fact, I will show you in just a moment. I'll turn this off and show you. No, I won't, because then you won't be able to hear me, because the phone won't be recording anymore. I'll come back in just a moment to show you the gimbal and how it packs down. So give me just a moment and I'll just rearrange things slightly. Right, we're back. This is the old gimbal that I've had about 18 months now, I think, maybe not quite as long as that. I've been really pleased with it. It's really good for taking moving shots and being able to get in closer to things, obviously, because you can just move it around. But the big problem that I had, which I mentioned, is that the bracketing, if I come up here, the phone has to sit in here with its bottom in there, which means you simply can't get an external microphone. And it would be much too boomy if you weren't using a microphone. So that was the only drawback with this, which is why you never saw me using this very much where I was speaking. And that it was mainly used for running shots. And I've become increasingly aware, as I've been trying to show you detail, that having the camera fixed on the tripod as it is now, and speaking, I just can't get in close enough for you to be able to see some of the detail, and I would like to be able to do that. So I was on the lookout for a new, well, at some point, a new gimbal, and I saw the newer version of the Osmo range. This is an Osmo 2 mobile, which is the Osmo 3, which was the thing that you saw before. So if I just bring it up here, you will see that it is lighter and smaller. and that the way in which the camera fixes in keeps both ends of the camera free. So you can fit a microphone to it. I've found you have to fit the microphone to it before you, after you've switched it on, because with this you pair the phone to the gimbal when you switch it on using an app on the phone, and then after that I put the microphone in, and that seems to the gimbal seems to cope with the fact that it's now got a weight on one side, and it rebalances. This one is actually a rather clever little thing because it folds down, so you connect that into there and hold it tight, and then push that, come round, and no, I can't do it. Right, take two. You can fold this down to make it so that it's much easier for travelling around with than the bigger gimbal, which has a case bigger than it in which it lives. This needs to be locked in place. There we go. And then I need to line up two things there. There you go, you see I can do it this time. And that folds down really quite small, which is quite helpful. So it's good for traveling. And then with, as I mentioned, my kit, I got the case in which it comes. So it's actually good for storage, because otherwise the gimbal can be a bit of a thing to put around. But I'm really looking forward to making some use of that, because it does mean for the recording that I'm doing that I'm able to get in closer and be able to show you rather better than using the zoom on the camera. Because I've noticed with using the zoom, the picture quality degrades quite markedly. Whereas if I can actually take the lens closer to the thing, that seems to work much better. So that's the new gimbal. I will possibly come back in a few weeks' time once I've used it a bit more to tell you how I'm getting on with it. But so far, I'm really pleased with it. So let's carry on now with whatever section may follow this one by the time I do the end of the video. Well, time for tool time tips. And I had a specific request about the glues that I use for scratch building, which is what Tool Time Tips is very much focused at. And I thought, well, that wouldn't take me very long until I got all the glues out. And I'm surprised quite how many different glues I have. And in fact, one of them isn't here, which I'll mention now. PVA. I do use PVA for some gluing together with scratch building, but not much. It takes quite a long while to go off, I find, and it doesn't grab very quickly. And particularly when you're using small items, you don't want to be sitting there a long time waiting for it to go off. For most of my card building, the main one is this, which you will have come across, Deluxe Rocket Card Glue. You'll see, if I bring it up here, that I use these thin tubes, I can't think what they're called now. You get them in packs of 6 or more. You do have to keep cutting them off regularly because rocket card glue dries very, very quickly, and it's quite hard to keep everything free flowing. But it does grab very quickly. You do need these thin things on them, I find, to keep the flow at a reasonable level, because otherwise it will just splodge and it will glue you and everything with it. Now, it's not like super glue, but it is a real pain, but it really does the job. One I haven't used as much is Superphatic, also by Deluxe. That's quite good for sticking MDF and that kind of thing together. I think it will work on card, but that's a more general purpose one than the card glue. Glue and glaze I've only just started using, because although you can use rocket card glue to glue glazed pieces in, it does have a tendency to dry. It says it dries transparent. I would say translucent was the word, in that you can sometimes get brown blobs, but apparently with the glue and glaze you can't. I've used it once already, and it is true, it seems to grow, but I'll be using it on the windows for the signal box. So we'll get a chance soon to see that in full flow. The two lots, those are just two types of super glue. One, as its name says, Rapid, and the other Rocket Max. That takes a lot longer to go off, so it gives you more time to move things around. before it goes off. That's about 10 to 20 seconds. This one is 5 to 10 seconds. Good old-fashioned Pritt stick. There will be times when Pritt stick is actually a good answer for you, particularly if you're making kits where you're having to stick like Skalstein's kits. Pritt is quite a good thing, though you do have a trouble sometimes with it bobbling up. These two here are my plastic glues, which is plastic weld, and the who make this? Revel Contactor Professional. Both of them work equally well. I sometimes find this better because it runs a little more easily. So by capillary action, it will run into joins slightly better. And there are some things which this will stick that won't, and vice versa. And so sometimes that's a bit trial and error. The things in the front are much more around more general purpose glues when I'm mixing types of material. So these are really much more for white metal kits, but I have used them on occasion where I've had to fit metal to paper. Not metal to paper, metal to wood, which worked okay. It wasn't brilliant, which is a two-part epoxy resin, but they do work very well at sticking white metal kits together. This is an Evo Stick impact adhesive, so you smear the glue on each side of the two things you want to glue together, leave it for 5 minutes, and then put the two pieces together firmly. Again, that has been used on some scratch builds, and these are just all-purpose adhesives. Yoo-hoo. Again, sometimes Yoo-hoo's a better choice than rocket card glue, and in a sense you sort of have to judge that when you're trying to build things. And this is just a Loctite all-purpose adhesive. And I thought I would include in this, remembering this is only meant to be 5 minutes long, two things which are not strictly glues, but which I have used in scratch building to fill gaps, and indeed in one case to actually mould the structure. The first is Milliput, which is a two-part putty. If you go back and have a look at the build of the War Memorial, I came across Milliput, and it was the thing that actually allowed me to craft the domed part of the War Memorial that sits above the soldier. And I'll put a link in here to that video so you can see the bit where I started using Milliput to actually form the structure around the plastic carcass. And this I got into just very recently, which is again a deluxe. You must think that this is a paid promotion for deluxe, but I assure you it isn't. Perfect Plastic Putty. This is excellent for filling small gaps when you don't quite get all your cuts right. It was used on the station building for the train shed, because although everything fitted almost perfectly, there was a little gap down one side, which when I put everything together and put the station building on the outside, it didn't quite fill. So a little bit of this smeared from the inside to fill the gap and then painted over, and you wouldn't know there was a gap there at all. So that is 6 minutes, I think, that this has been going, which is a little bit longer for Tool Time Tips and is a bit of a hurry through. But I was amazed actually how many different sorts of glue. But they really group around the things that I use for card and when I'm using wood, which is these. This is really when you need some heavy duty long-term gluing. The plastic glues, and then more all-purpose glues when I need to fix together different types of material. So that's Tool Time Tips for this edition. You'll recall in the last video that I said that I was going to take a design that Paul Chapman of Galgorm Hall had designed for a signal box on his layout and turning it into N-gauge. And this is the start of that process. In the last video, you saw this drawing and that I'd already started working out exactly half size, because I'm going to work on exactly half size. It is strictly somewhere around 51 to 52% to take 00 gauge to N gauge, but it really doesn't make much difference, and it starts giving you some really strange distances that you're going to have to round down or up anyway. So going to half size, And even with that, I was coming out with some distances that are to the 0.5 millimeter, which is a degree of precision, especially cutting by hand, that you may not always achieve. So what I've been doing here, and what you see in front, is starting to draw to scale the elements of the signal box. To give you an idea, I've put a 9-volt battery next to a scale drawing of what would be the rear wall, with the lean-to building that's at the back and the roof of the lean-to building. So you can see it's going to be quite small. I'll move that out of the way now. And so I've been trying to work in my head the order in which I'm going to build things, because one of the things that I have to do is I'm using a different window set from the one that Paul's been able to use, which is a scale model scenery kit. I'll put in here an image of the kit, which I think he had commissioned and which has now gone into general use. For reasons that I explained last time, I think I could ask for that kit to be taken down to half size, but scale model scenery are extraordinarily busy, and they're now just about to move as well. So I could be waiting quite a long time. But it did make me think also that scaling that kit down to half size might give some very thin internal sections for the window panes, which may or may not be possible to cut, and that you'd end up with needing brass etch. And I discovered, as you'll recall, that I had a set of brass etch windows which come with the interior kit for the pico or ratio signal box. And this is they. And so I've been starting to play, and you can just about see them up here. When you bend them off, they bend. If I bring this here, you'll see the top and bottoms bend, which is actually quite helpful. Obviously to insert into the ratio kit in place of whatever it is that you get in the kit normally. Doing all of this has begun to make me think that the sensible order for doing things is to build what will be the windows. If I use the bigger drawing rather than trying to use the small one, this space here is where the windows get set in, and there is here on the original plan a 2 millimeter lip that comes out. I can't remember whether Paul kept with that or actually just built the windows up to that level. What I'm going to do is I will, the side wall will just be this piece here, so that it will come down here. There'll be a door cut into it at the bottom of the door frame here, and then this section. And what I'm going to do is build a window section that will take the whole of the front here and the two side pieces. And once I've built that, I will then put the rest of the building around that window section, if that makes sense. Because I'm hoping that I will be able to cut everything to the accuracy I need so that it is exactly 42 millimeters long. But if I don't, the beauty is that I can then adjust everything else to fit the window section, because that's the trickiest bit of the build. Everything else is fairly straightforward. It's just, the 4 walls, sticking a door in, putting some steps up the side, and then building the roof. But of themselves, they're really quite straightforward. The key thing will be getting that window section done that's exactly right to fit in with what I need. And I think it can be done fairly straightforwardly. What I've got here is some L section, if you can see, strip styrene, and rather handily, I think the windows will sit in this rather nicely. You can see if I keep it in focus and actually show it to you. And I'll be able to get 4 of those windows together. Excuse me. I think if I get it right, I can get 4 of the windows together and a 4 millimeter strip of 1 millimeter thick strip styrene, or maybe even, here we go, I've got a thinner piece of strip styrene that will go in there, and that should still give me, I think, 1 millimeter either side for me to either insert this stuff here, and you won't probably be able to see it very well, that's 1mm square, or I might even, no, I will put that in. I think I'll put that in as 1mm square, because along the side, I've got 4 big windows there, and along the side I'll be using these narrower windows, and I'll work out how many I can get in. I think I can get 3 in the space that I need. So that will give good sight vision for the box from either side and immediately out front. And I think that will just about fill the space. But once I've built that whole window section, I can then build the walls to fit around that section. So that's what I'm going to go off and do. I'll come back once I've got the window section finished, because it really is going to be no more than trying to make the frame out of this with mitered corners and a similar one to go on top, then inserting the windows and the bracing pieces that will be at each corner and obviously at each end, and the one in the center, and hopefully that will all go together and it will look lovely. In the alternative, I may come back frustrated, but we'll see which way it goes. So that's the next piece of work that I'll be doing on building the signal box. And well, now we can move on to the next part of the video. I thought I would show you in this video the build of the window section for the signal box. This is L-shaped strip styrene cut to form the top and bottom of the window frames, and then stuck together with 1mm square strip styrene to create the frame, and then more 1mm square strip styrene to complete the frame sections. I was then able to move on to putting in the front windows. These are 4 windows separated by a 4mm by 1mm strip of strip styrene. The side windows were smaller windows and were separated by 3mm by 1mm strip styrene. And the front windows were also fixed at the back with a very thin strip of styrene, before a bar was put across the top, which you can only just about see here, and a hole drilled through to take the light. And this is the completed thing, primed. The next stage will be to paint the white bits into red, and also probably to put some strip styrene in the front over where some of the windows have not gone together as well as I'd like. And that's as far as I've managed to get this to this stage. Well, that just about wraps it up for this week. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed, well, please do subscribe and hit the bell notification so that you know when I'm uploading. And of course, if you've got any comments on what you've seen this week, then please do let me have them. It is one of the most enjoyable parts of doing these videos, the ability to respond to questions and to comments in the videos. Next time round, I'm hoping, if I don't go throwing drills around the place, that we will have some power into the track at High Elven, and you'll be able to see the first train arrive into the station. So looking forward to that in about a fortnight's time, and until I see you again, that's bye-bye from me. Bye-bye.